Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Art and Talk. I have a playlist on here where I just put all my little talks together. Today I wanted to talk about prayer, but not just why we should pray, who are we praying to, it's not that. I wanted to talk about the truth and the fullness of what we're praying for and who we're praying to. I think with prayer, like we said, prayer is a conversation. And so the same way you would talk to your mom, or the same way you would talk to your friend, or the same way you would talk to your teacher, prayer is just having a conversation. But usually our conversations differ based on our trust or knowledge of the person that we're talking to. And so if I was talking to someone who I knew didn't like me, I wouldn't have very much trust with talking to them. I wouldn't tell them everything. I would keep the conversation pretty dry because I know that this person is not for me. Whereas if I was having a conversation with, let's say, my mom, for example, I might be more open to telling her things. I might be more trustworthy with my secrets or whatever it is that's bothering me, right? So to one person, I might say nothing's wrong. And to another person, I might tell them everything that's wrong. And so ultimately, to have a trustful and truthful and healthy conversation, you actually have to know the character of the person you're talking to and trust them. And so with prayer, it's ultimately just a conversation with God, but a lot of us don't tell him everything because number one, we don't trust him. Number two, we don't know his character. And number three, we see him the way that we see human beings. And so today I was on a walk and I was having a conversation with God, and I saw this YouTube video by Shantia Deja. I think I'll link it down below. And she was talking about releasing shame and guilt. And so I was talking to God about shame and guilt, and I was telling him that I feel like the four kind of things that have plagued me for a very long time in my life is shame and guilt and judgment and embarrassment. And I feel like all four of those go together. And I made an episode about this, I think. I'll put it in the cards, but it was about shame, guilt, and embarrassment. But I also want to add judgment in there because judgment is a big thing. And so for me, I rather feel guilt and judgment than shame and embarrassment. Shame and embarrassment is more of a people shaming you and embarrassing you, and guilt and judgment is more of a you versus you type of thing, right? And so I can handle myself, but I don't think that I could handle a bunch of people shaming me or being embarrassed in front of a bunch of people. But those four things have been plaguing me, and so I was talking to God about it, and I was basically just telling him about why I feel shame, how I feel like I can never stop feeling shame, how shame has stopped me from doing a lot of the things or being slightly disobedient in the things that God has wanted me to do. And so I brought up this scenario in my life. It was a time in my life where I was still discovering myself, still discovering my identity, and it was just a time in my life where I was so open that I was also open to darkness. I was also open to different types of things, and I think for me it started with music. And so the type of music I listened to was, I was a teen, right? At the time I was a very young teen, so the type of music I listened to was whatever was in. And obviously those type of stuff is drill music, R&B, just stuff that we have no business listening to and no business singing. And so for a good portion of my preteen years, that music programmed me, and a lot of the music was about drugs, killing, sex, just living a very rigorous lifestyle. And so that's the type of music that programmed me. That's the type of music that I listened to. And so when it came time for all those doors to be open, what doors do you think was open? Every time somebody made me mad, I was angry upon angry, and I never understood why I was so angry, but it was that music that conditioned me. Whenever I saw a post, what was it fueled by? Lust. Why? Because I listened to music about sex and just things that were not right. And so I was telling God about that, and I was talking to him about how I'm so ashamed of that, and I'm so ashamed of that particular part of my journey. And it's crazy because I'm sharing it with you right now, but it's just I was telling God about how I'm just not ready to talk to anybody about that because it's still very awkward for me to talk about. And if I have selective memory with anything, it's about that particular time of my life, because I was just so like lost, and I was so confused, and I was just searching and searching and searching. And it started off with music, then it started off with curiosity, and then it started off with action. And though that lustful period of my life didn't last for a very long time, it was a very shameful and embarrassing moment, and it's very shameful and embarrassing to admit. I also believe that like part of that is part of self-image and just the way that I carry myself. And I feel like I, as a person, put a huge emphasis on the way that I carry myself and the way that I look to other people. And so it almost like taps into my perfectionist side. And so anything that makes me look slightly tainted or anything that makes me look slightly human scares me and it embarrasses me, and I'm shameful of it. And I think it's just because as a child I grew up in a household that made me feel like the very things that made me human was what was wrong with me, right? And so every time I did a human thing and I was shamed for it, it made me feel like anything associated with these very human interactions and actions was embarrassing and shameful, and incited guilt and judgment. And so now it's just like I'm growing up as this like a robot, constantly trying to be perfect, constantly trying not to make mistakes. But unfortunately for me, I'm not Jesus Christ, and I am not sinless, and I am not a lamb to be slain. Like, I'm not that. Like, I am as filthy as this world is. And so I guess that a part of our journey with God that I'm trying to encourage you guys to tap into is fully being honest with Him. I know we say, well, God, I've been honest with you, but it's those thoughts that you have that you quickly try to get rid of in the night so that you don't have to remember that that happened in your life. That's the type of things that God wants to hear. That's the type of things that we should be telling Him. Those things that pop up in our mind and torment us for a second and then leave. And then we're like, oh, I hate that I just thought of that. That's the type of things we need to be telling God. We don't tell God the obvious things because they're obvious, right? And so I just wanted to encourage you guys that in your prayer time with God, maybe doors aren't opening for you, or maybe you're not getting the clarity or the answers that you need. Consider that it might just be because you're not fully being open and honest. And it's not like consciously. Sometimes we subconsciously hide those parts of ourselves, but God knows the ins and outs of us. He knows how dirty and filthy we are. He knows how much we need Him, and He is gracious. He is not like our human counterparts who are just here to judge us or here to show that they lived better lives than us. He knows everything we did, and He was there when we did it, and He is gracious and compassionate and quick to forgive. So we just need to lay that at His feet, and He will do a good work in you.